See it. All right. Well, as Leah mentioned, I am Melissa DeSico, and I'm the Director of Client Performance for Satisfax and Apartment Ratings. And today we get to talk about all things maintenance. We have an incredible panel, as Leah mentioned, of maintenance experts. And yes, you heard it right, maintenance experts. This is our first power panel of all maintenance superstars, and we are super excited for you all to meet them. I'm gonna switch over. All right. All right, so just to get a little bit of what we're going to do today. So we should be full of maintenance knowledge at the end of the hour. And right after that, we will send you in a follow-up email the recording from today and also the slides. So we do want you to take notes, but you will have all of the information following our webinar. Today, we also want to make this interactive. So if you have any questions, use the question box in the side panel navigation, and we will get to those either during the webinar or we'll save them for the Q&A at the very end. So make sure you get those questions in as soon as you think of them. Then we'll also have an exit survey. We are all about rating right here at Satisfax and Apartment Ratings. So we'd love to see how you felt about the webinar today. So we'd love to hear your comments and your ratings of our efforts today. We also are going to offer up a time for you to sign up for the next month's webinar. So we'll tell you all about the one that's coming up for August. And then if you stick around to the very end, we also have a $50 giveaway. So hopefully we will see you all at that point as well. All right. In case you've missed any of our other webinars, good news, they can be accessed in our on-demand library at satisfax.com. So those are all there. We've had some great content over the last year or so. So now, without further ado, we will announce and let you meet our panelist, which I believe is in the wrong, on the wrong slide here. I apologize. Okay, I promise they're here. All right, so we will get started. If my panelists could unmute just for a moment to say hello. We first have Josh Kelly. He's the maintenance supervisor at the Bradford at Easton with Trilogy Residential Management.
Hello.
Hello, Josh. So Josh is over in Ohio, and he has a garden style community. And Josh, what did you say your unit count was over there?
We have 324 units here.
Perfect. So a great size garden community.
Yeah.
All right, well, welcome. And then we have Caleb Peterson. He's the maintenance supervisor at Wabash Landing from Sheehan Companies.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Caleb. And so he is in a mid-rise in West Lafayette, Indiana. And what is your unit count, Caleb?
211.
Perfect. And lastly, we have Matt Johnson, the service manager at Park Meridian at Eisenhower Station with Paradigm.
Hello, how are you?
Good, good. And he is in Alexandria, Virginia, in a luxury high-rise out there. And can you remind us how many units you have out there too?
We have 505 in this building.
Wonderful. So we have a really good mix of the types of buildings that these folks are at, and then also the unit count. So I think we'll get a lot of great information. Not only, most of them have been at several different types of communities, so we have some great information to share with you today. All right, so I need to flip a little bit from my slides because they were a little off. So I wanted to start and just kind of give an introduction about online reputations and maintenance's impact. So today it's becoming more and more important because consumers are more savvy and they really want that authenticity and transparency in online reviews, especially when looking for an apartment, because we know if we read a review that duped us into having a bad meal at a restaurant, right, that only impacts about an hour of our life, right? But if we get duped from an apartment rating, that's impacting potentially a year of our life if we have a year lease. So apartment ratings are a little bit different and much more impactful for the consumer. So usually these are just some of the words that we see. When maintenance is going really, really great at a community, we see words in our reviews such as fast, no issues, and the most important one, which is worth the price, right? That's what we're all trying to strive for. But when maintenance isn't going so great, we see things like takes forever, still having problems, and then the dreaded not worth the price. So those are the things that we start to see when maintenance is not going so great. And some of the examples, obviously we know that maintenance is and can be our biggest asset at our communities, right? Maintenance teams are the ones that interact most often with our residents and have that opportunity to make those impressions throughout their residency. And so this is an example of one, and they're the #1 driver of those positive reviews. So in this one, we see it's worth the price. The maintenance team comes quickly and resolve the problem. So you're really saving the day for these residents. But the honest truth is that it can also be the #1 complaint topic, unfortunately, as well. So when maintenance isn't going so well, you start to see that those keywords in this example where it's not worth the money. They paid 2 weeks of their paycheck and it's not worth it. And they've had to contact them time and time again. So it's really that coin where it's, you know, if it's going really, really good, it's the biggest asset that you have at your community. And to show how this plays out in your Satisfax surveys, we analyzed our annual survey and separated out those who rated appearance and condition of their apartment home at a 4 or a 5. And so this one, as most of you know who are familiar with Satisfaction apartment ratings, appearance and condition of the apartment home is the #2 driver of value for 2021. And maintenance is making or breaking these scores. So you can see in this slide that the maintenance team, all 3 of the top highest scoring factors for apartment condition and appearance are maintenance related. So those who rated the maintenance teams really, really high also rated the #2 driver of resident finding value in their apartment. So if they don't have such a great experience with the maintenance team, they end up rating the overall value driver of appearance and condition of the apartment home at 3 or below. So it makes a really big impact. And the interesting thing about it is that it's not just in the appearance and condition of the apartment home, which sort of makes sense, right? Obviously, they're the ones that are making sure that the apartment's ready and it looks fantastic for our residents. But also, the same sort of trend comes through with value for rent. So you can see that 2 of the 3 highest scoring factors for value for rent overall are also maintenance related. So those that rate it high, 5 or 4, are talking about the maintenance team and how that's influencing how they feel that they're getting value for how much they're paying. And it keeps going. So you also see it in likelihood to renew. So again, 2 of the top 3 highest scoring factors for renewal likelihood have to do with the maintenance team. And lastly, if they're going to recommend your community, again, the top 2 out of the 3 are also maintenance related. So they're really making a huge influence on our residents' experience overall and some of our top drivers of value. So I wanted to get some of your, and see what you guys think. So we've been tracking the Satisfax Index, which is our national average for work order surveys for a long, long time. So on the screen here, I have from 2017 to now. And every year, our work order national average satisfaction increases. So we have 4.38 in 2017, all the way to 4.55 in 2020. So I'd like to do a poll. Some of you that are Satisfax clients, you probably have a little heads up on this, but we wanted to see what you guys think is the Satisfax average for 2021, knowing that it's been going up every year. Do you think that it has gone up or has it gone down this year? So I'm going to launch this poll and you can just click on your screen what you think the Satisfax work order rating is for 2021. And this is the national average. We'll give everybody just a few seconds here. We've got 30% voting, so click on your screen, let us know what you think it is. Do you think it went up? Do you think it went down? Do you think it stayed stagnant? Got 53. Okay, we're hitting 66. All right, let's get to 70. A couple more clicks. Okay, we got to 70. All right. So it looks like we are side. So it looks like people are thinking, so 4.57 or 4.49. So not too many people thought that it went up to 4.72. And the good news is that you guys are correct. Okay. Okay, can you guys see my screen okay?
Yep, we got your screen.
Okay, all right. So you are right. So a good portion of you, 39%, thought it was 4.57, and that is accurate. So every year it has gone up, including this year. So we are at 4.57. And the good news is our panel today has been blowing these scores out of the water. So
Hey,
these
Melissa,
guys, yes.
sorry, can you unpause your screen? Just click on the little play button. There you go. Perfect.
You guys see it all right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Leah. All right. All right. So our panel, like I said, has been blowing it out of the water. So you can see each of our panelists have really, really high scores. So Josh over there at Trilogy has 4.77 for his work order average. Caleb is at 4.9 and Matt is at 4.89. So really, really high scores, especially with that national average being at 4.57. So we thought we would get to know these guys a little bit better. So if we can, we'd like to hear from each of them, what is their favorite thing about their job? So we will start with Josh. Can you unmute, Josh?
Yep, I'm here.
Yay. So what is your favorite thing about multifamily and being in the maintenance industry?
Yeah, so thinking about this question, main thing that came to mind is the fact that I really genuinely and love helping people in any way I can, whether that's my team in the office or my team with my guys. I love helping in any way I can, but also as a maintenance supervisor, I know that I have a unique opportunity of helping people on a daily basis. That's, doing work orders and making sure the apartment homes are exactly how they need it and making sure everything is working as it should, but also being friendly, getting to know people. This is where people live. It's not just an apartment and another address. It's actually where people live. So understanding that and just the opportunity to help people as much as I can on a daily basis is very fulfilling for me. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. Absolutely. I think that caring for people is probably the #1 job qualification in this industry.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome. So Caleb, we'll go to you next. What is your favorite thing?
So obviously I'm going to second Josh on that a little bit, but we all know that our favorite part of the job is lunchtime, right? No, but for me, it's like problem solving. I love figuring things out. So with residents, I like to explain what we're doing, things like that. A lot of the times, some of the residents feel like, the reason why something broke is their fault, which we know, sometimes can be, but usually isn't. So for me, it's just, I don't know, it's something different every day too. Even though we all get the same call for something being wrong with a toilet or a sink, the scenarios are always different. So for me, it's definitely the problem solving and I like being around people. It makes the day go by quicker. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love it. It always changes, right? It's never the same, even though the problems may be similar. All right. And how about Matt?
Well, I'm going to have to dovetail in on Caleb's answer a little bit with different things. I chose a job where I work with my hands because I can't imagine being constrained to an office. But the variety of work that's available, if you look at construction jobs in general, you do the same thing every day. Whereas being a maintenance guy or a service manager on an apartment community, we wear so many different hats that we're not doing the same thing over and over again, and it breaks up the monotony. It's kind of like creating something different every day with adult Legos. So there's plenty of variety in the job. You'd never have a dull day or get bored.
Very, very true. Absolutely. Well, wonderful. I think those are all really important qualities that you've all mentioned for our maintenance teams. And just a reminder, we're going to go on with the webinar, but don't forget, we have these great experts here. So make sure if you have questions throughout to use that questions box on your navigation screen, because I know that these guys are itching to share their knowledge. And if you have some questions, they'll be the ones to answer those for you. So, all right, so I'm going to go to the next one here. So we want to talk about first impressions. And first impressions, as we know, really set the tone for the entire residency for our customers. So you can either put them on high alert or you can wow them. And with our Satisfact surveys, we found that about 21% of new move-ins have something broken in their apartment, which obviously we know does not leave a great first impression. And so that, unfortunately, our maintenance teams are the ones that have the power to make sure that all of these things are happening, as long as there's communication with their office teams and working together as a team. So 21% of those new move-ins, that gives us that opportunity to really take that number, drop it down, and provide wow moments. And so this is just an example of a resident review about this person. They gave this apartment community a chance. They had bad reviews, but they thought, oh no, it's probably fine. But then all of a sudden they turn around and find out that today is the first day and has literally been awful. So that first day, they want to be wowed. They want to feel good about their decision to live at your community. So it's really important to have those really great first impressions. And I know that Josh over there at Trilogy, so he and his team have amazing scores, not only on their work order Satisfact surveys, but also on apartment ratings. So they have such good feedback talking about how wonderful the grounds look, which we know the cleanliness of the grounds makes a really good impression on people that come to see our residents. So you want to make sure they're proud of where they live. But also they're fast, they're knowledgeable. So he and his team are offering a really great first impression to their residents. So I wanted to talk with him a little bit about how they make sure that that first impression is positive so that it starts the resident on the right track for the rest of their residency.
Yeah, so as you said, or pretty much said, but first impressions are nearly impossible to change. That we all know that. The minute someone walks onto our community, it's very easy for them to get that first impression, whether there is trash on the ground or there isn't. That's gonna kind of set us apart from other properties. So just making sure, a couple things that we do, we walk our grounds every single morning. We like to split up we have a large footprint here, so we like to split up our grounds into zones, and we're rotating those zones so everyone's seeing it and everyone on my team has eyes on everything. When it comes to move-ins, couple best practices that we like to use. Obviously, the turn quality is a big thing, and making sure that we're walking those. I like to walk those after each business partner is in there. So whether the painters go in there, I like to go in after to ensure that everything looks as crisp and clean as it should. And I like to do that with each business partner. And one thing I have found is it's a great training opportunity as well for different team members to do that walk with myself or our property manager. And I like to also go by, whether I walk right when someone picks up keys, whether I walk their apartment home with them or sometimes I like to swing by, and as they're moving in, I know the hustle and bustle of getting moved in sometimes can get in the way of this, but I like to stop by, introduce myself as the maintenance supervisor, and just ensure that we're here if you need anything, but also here's how a few things work. Here's your garbage disposal, and there's a reset underneath, and just kind of give them a little bit of info that, for one, makes a good first impression that, the day they move in, we're trying to show face and let them know, hey, we're here. If you need anything, let us know. Here's how a few things work that you may not know. And then, we just try to keep that impression throughout their stay. So, yeah.
I love that you go and meet all of the new move-ins and sort of introduce yourself. I think that sets a really nice tone just for the residency. They get to know a little, a few more people at the property and all of that. So, and I think you mentioned, do you guys use a checklist too, right? To make sure that you're...
Yes. We use an app called HappyCo. We use it for multiple different things, and it's very, very useful for everything we do. But one thing that we like to do is for all our turns before the move-in, we walk it, and there's this checklist that we go through. And what's great about this app is you can actually customize all these checklists. So whatever exactly you are looking for as a maintenance supervisor, you can customize that checklist, and each community is going to be different, so you can customize all that. But the checklist really helps, especially if you have multiple apartment homes that you're walking and making sure they're good to go. The checklist, you can just go through and zip through everything, and it keeps everything very organized and less headaches in the future.
Absolutely. And I like that you walk with all your vendors too, sort of give them those expectations to make sure that they get it right on your set, on your terms, right?
Exactly.
That's wonderful. All right. Well, we will move to the next one. So Caleb and his team have an incredible work order score, as I mentioned earlier. And so they consistently get 5s for satisfaction on those. And we know more goes into those scores than just the actual work for the work order, right? So we'd like to hear a little bit from Caleb about best practices for maintenance communication, not only within his maintenance team, but also with the residents and also the office team. Are you there, Caleb?
Yes. Yep, I'm here. So one of the apps that we use is called That Key. What that does is allow us to text the residents without actually having to use our own personal numbers and stuff to find out, like, on what day works best for them, what time. We also have a site that we use called One Site, which is kind of like what Josh was saying, where we can go into what is called the Make Ready board and kind of do the exact same thing that Josh was saying. But old school notes for me, I use so that way if a resident isn't home, I can leave a little note saying, what I did, what we did. But we also have radios that I use to communicate with the office and stuff like that. Sometimes the office will email the resident because with that key, the resident can opt out and not do the texting. So emails obviously always work. But I always just leave notes too. Like when we close a work order out, it automatically gets sent to the residents. And in doing that, I can explain what we did, what we will be doing in the future if need be, whether we're needing a special part or, a vendor to come in. So we use that key and, emailing and, like I said, I use sticky notes basically. We also have tags that we put on the outside of the door So if the resident isn't home, and they do show up while we're there, they know somebody's in the apartment at that time, or if we leave, the resident knows that we were there and what time and when.
Wonderful. So how do you guys keep making sure that the office and the maintenance team are on the same page? So especially if you and your team are texting some of the residents and then they're emailing, how do you make sure that all of that stuff is keeping the resident as up to date as possible without any sort of conflicts between what they're hearing from either team?
Well, we always obviously come together and discuss, what needs to be done first, as far as whether it's, emergencies or something like that. But we that key texting and the emailing is what really works for us, because then we all get notified, so we know who has been where and done what. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So does that all keep track of all the communication then?
Yes. And like I said, with the work orders that the residents put in, anytime we go in and out, it's got a timer on it that starts it and stuff, so they know when we went in, when we left. And like I said, there's little entry note things that you can put at the end that explains what we did. And so if we close out one work order, another technician or something like that can't, go there and say, oh, I didn't know somebody was already here type thing. It closes that work order out, so then it's no longer in the system and we can move on to the next.
Interesting. I love it. All right. All right, so Matt and his team have some seriously amazing, consistent, positive reviews, all talking about how helpful, how responsive, and knowledgeable his team is. So I was wondering if we could hear from Matt a little bit about what you think the biggest challenge is for maintenance teams today.
That is such an open-ended question. It's kind of hard to pinpoint one item. I'd have to point at probably four things, one of which being communications that the other panelists just discussed. But time management is probably the biggest challenge for us, and that is affected by other things that play into it. We have residents that have high expectations, rightfully so, especially considering a luxury high rise here, or even if we're talking about a garden style somewhere else that may be a class B or C. Residents currently have high expectations, both for the maintenance staff to get the job done, fix the problems, provide a beautiful product for them to move into, and communicate with them. And it's not just, hey, we're done. It has to be lengthy, drawn out communication on what happened, why it broke, what the problem was, and many other things. So we are, PR representatives, for lack of a better description. And the time crunch and the issue with juggling time creates issues with employee morale. If your employees are not happy, they're not doing a good job. And honestly, if you look at the scores that you just had on the screen, I didn't do any of that work. My subordinates did, my employees did. And if they're not happy, they're not getting the job done, then nobody's going to be happy. So it's trying to buffer how much stress is on them and take some of it on your own shoulders. And it has become a very big challenge in the last, probably 10 years, 15 years. It, just like you had on the screen earlier, the Satisfax index has gone up, which means that the expectations have gone up to match, which means we have to work harder to just maintain that level of satisfaction and hopefully increase the expectation level to our clients. It becomes very difficult for the maintenance team. We don't speak the same language. We're not PR people. We're not necessarily friendly in general. We have a very linear thought. We like to fix things and move on. And that is our job, but it has also become customer service representatives, not just repair guys. And juggling all of those things in this current age of instant gratification and instant communication just wears you out. We're trying to cram 10 to 12 hours worth of work in an 8-hour workday just to keep up with the norm, with the industry standard of one maintenance technician per 100 units, and it is becoming more and more difficult with every day that goes past. So trying to juggle employee morale, keep the employees happy, and having the tools they need to get the job done and the job done right in a timely manner with a smile on their face, and balancing the expectations of the owners, upper management, everybody in general that we interface with. You know, we're serving multiple masters, not just one, and it becomes stressful. And a lot of maintenance technicians will, will show that in anger and frustration and burnout, and they choose another career as a result. And it's hard to keep people in staff nowadays. So, biggest challenge, good staff maintaining it, and then juggling the calendar and the schedule as it changes on a minute-by-minute basis.
So true. I think a lot of us feel that right now, right, with staffing especially. What do you do with your team to help manage their time? I know you mentioned that residents do have high expectations, as do owners. So what do you do something with your team that really does help with that time management piece while also keeping their morale high?
Well, traditionally, I would take, you always have slack time in a schedule. So, 15 years ago, when we didn't have computers instantly generating work orders and creating a long list of work, you could take an employee that you see as being stressed out and frustrated and put them on some easier work that didn't necessarily interact with the client base, and give them a day or two of different work, easier work, or just, for lack of a better description, slack time, to let them decompress. But now, with things as they are, we don't have that luxury anymore, and you just have to push them, and at the same time, almost be a parent and listen to their frustrations, give them some reassuring words, and send them on about their way to continue the job. We're all grown-ups. They have to accept that sometimes there's stress, but as a supervisor or a manager, you have to take some of that upon yourself and figure out a way for you to vent it off, because at some point, it's a pressure cooker. So you just, as the leader, you take the responsibility and try to protect your employees and get them to do the job and be happy with their job, and you deal with the consequences.
Absolutely. And I like the idea of a little bit of slack time. You're right, especially if you've come into a situation with a lot of stress, it sometimes helps just to have just an easier task, just quickly to sort of decompress and get back in the game, right? So I love that. All right, so I think all of us have, as Matt was just sharing, work orders, trying to keep up with those and the expectations while also being as friendly as possible with our residents can sometimes be a challenge. And so Caleb and his team do a really good job of this. And, I wanted him to talk through a little bit about his work order best practices, because as a lot of us know, speed in terms of what a resident thinks is speed from the moment they, submit the work order, and ours, when our clock starts, is a little bit different. So I just wanted to talk to Caleb and talk about how he manages that process from beginning to end.
Well, on our end over here, most of our residents know that we try to get the work orders done within a 24-hour time period. Now that depends on parts needed and other things. But like I said, with that key that we use, messaging them to find out what works best for them on when to go and do the work order, I think makes a difference. It's sorry, I've never done this before, so it's hard for me to explain. But if
Well, you guys get consistently, fives on your work order survey. So how do you keep your team sort of, how do you communicate those results to your team? How do you keep them motivated, or talk about, successes or where maybe we could improve, things like that? Does that help you sort of keep your team on the right track to make sure those work orders are being consistent?
Are you guys having trouble hearing me?
Oh, yeah, we may have lost you for a second.
Oh, yeah, I try to treat every apartment as if it was, like say my grandma's apartment. We don't just go in and, cut corners. Doing that just causes more issues where you're going to get callbacks. And don't get me wrong, we always, you'll always have a callback. But doing it right the first time and not cutting the corners, just taking that extra 5 to 10 minutes to do it the right way, I believe helps. Like for instance, yesterday I had to charge a unit, and when I come back down to speak with the resident, his first thing when I came back was, "It's still hot in here." So all I did was explain, that it takes time for the apartment, because it's not only just heating, or you're not just only trying to cool the apartment, it's trying to cool all your furniture, everything inside, so that it does take time. But just being friendly, I think, is the biggest part about it. And when you're in there working, talking to them, asking them how their day is going, and before you leave, making sure there's nothing else we can do for them at that time. Just things like that. I think being friendly goes a long way.
Absolutely. Residents always want to talk to you and find out what's going on or what happened, right?
Yeah.
So do you coach your team on sort of how to answer those questions, or how do you handle that resident communication piece that's kind of, you never know what's going to happen, right?
Yeah. And you'll have residents that, like Matt was saying, where, they have a high expectation. And within doing that, a lot of the times it's best just to let them talk versus interrupting and telling them that they're wrong or something like that. It, it, I don't have, it's,
No, that's good. That's good. And you said you use
if,
that
if
key
we,
and
if we do get a low score, which, obviously most of the time, or I think they are actually anonymous, but trying to figure out who it was kind of helps. And then, we discuss, what happened, what went wrong, just what we can do in the future to make that situation better, depending on, what it is.
right, that's great. It turns into sort of a learning opportunity for your team, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, good. All right. So speaking of that learning sort of opportunity, the next question we have is for Matt about training the team. So you never know what's going to happen. Everything's, as we spoke about earlier, it's always something different. You never know. So how do you train your teams, and how do you make sure that they are ready for all of those things coming at them? As you mentioned, it's so much more than it used to be. So how do you keep them ready to go?
Well, as far as the customer service aspect of it, it's more of a lead by example type of thing. Now, don't get me wrong. In private, I'm typically a grumpy, obnoxious person that most people don't want to be around. But when it comes to the client base, I'm usually, friendly, happy, smiling, and they see that and they basically will mimic that regardless of what the situation is. But as far as training them for the actual work that needs to be done, I kind of do a hands-on approach and Socratic method concept. Most supervisors are set aside with the khaki pants in most property management companies, and I choose to wear blue ones. I'm no different than my employees. I might be their boss, but we're all the same in the same boat, doing the same job. And I actually go and work with them. If, let's say, we have an air conditioner issue, I will go with the employee, a new employee that hasn't been trained, and do the work, talk to him while I'm doing the work, explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and how different parts work, and make him watch and pay attention. And I'll ask questions of him to see if he remembered what I told him. The second go around with a similar issue or the same issue on a different unit, same unit, doesn't matter. I will have him do the work and see what he remembers, ask questions, and I will ask leading questions to try and jog their memory. And then the third go around, he does all of the work. I just stand there and watch. And then if it was done right, you give him the affirmation of, hey, you did a great job. That was awesome. If he did it wrong, then, hey, you got to break it apart and do it again. And after that period, most of them tend to remember what has to be done. Now, there are always exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, that's it. So, I've been doing this a long time, and I learned by watching people, and I pass that along. Most people that are in service-related industries, like I've said before, are not very good communicators. We speak a different language than most people. If you take two guys that work on air conditioners, they can talk with each other and understand what they're discussing. If you take somebody that doesn't work on an air conditioner, they will have no idea what some of the part numbers, part names are. And you just have to work through that communication thing. We tend to be more tactile responsive, meaning we learn by doing, by using our hands. So you just have to take them and do the job with them, and they'll remember it. Classroom book learning doesn't work for a lot of us. We just don't have that mental ability to remember what we read, whereas other people in more streamlined, let's say, office jobs are capable of remembering things that they read. So it depends on personality, but that's how I teach my people, and it seems to have worked for the most part over the years. So
I think that's a good point. I think sometimes we don't think about the different language that our office and maintenance teams speak. And so I know some of our clients are probably on the call and have used our work order workshop before, but that tool tries to help bridge that gap, right? So it helps our maintenance teams can walk our office teams through, the common work orders at the property and what kinds of questions to ask so that they're more accurate when they first get there. And then also our teams that go to the apartments are ready with the right tools, right? Because if you don't have a good description or a good understanding of what the problem is, it's hard to be prepared for to fix whatever's broken, right?
that is true. A lot of those tools are helpful for the most part. Sometimes, in all honesty, some of them can be unhelpful, which brings different expectations. Think of it in mainstream. Google is not necessarily your friend. WebMD, just because your thumb hurts doesn't mean you have pancreatic cancer. You might have slammed it in the car door a couple of days ago. Google, my air conditioner doesn't work. Now everybody's expecting a brand new air conditioner because Google says it needs to be replaced. So there are some downsides to the modern world and expectations that go with it. And we have to communicate, no, your air conditioner doesn't need to be replaced. We need to replace this $10 part, and it's going to take us 2 hours to do it. And then we'll be fine. And we just have to get past what they expect by wherever they derive their information to the practical reality of the situation at hand.
Right, so now it's your job too to make sure people understand. They're probably asking more questions in the same way they're approaching doctors with their symptoms, right? So
exactly. If they have Google, everyone thinks they're an engineer, and it's not necessarily the case.
Right. That is so true. I love that analogy. All right, so I know all of our teammates that have been on the call today have talked about motivating their team. So I know that all of us are struggling with our maintenance teams and keeping them motivated because their job is so hard and so demanding right now. And we're also struggling keeping our teams staffed. So, more than ever, keeping them motivated, helping them, have developmental opportunities within the industry is really important. So I wanted Josh to talk a little bit about how he keeps his team motivated.
Yeah, so as a little bit of piggyback off of what Matt said, by leading by example, I feel like that's such a good thing to remember as any sort of leadership, not just maintenance supervisors, but it's such a blanket statement that a lot of people say. So what I try to do, and really try to show up to work every day with this mindset of leading by example, but there's a lot of different ways that that can be done. But showing up positive about, a positive outlook on the day, and just myself being motivated for what the day may bring. Now, different things may arise to where, my motivation may drop, or my positivity or anything like that. But I have noticed that if I am keeping that sort of in the forefront of my mind, to understand that I need to be positive. This is I have team members under me that look to me for leadership and an example. So keeping that in mind, and understanding, and being understanding that we're all, we all have things outside of work that may affect our daily motivation, and understanding that with my team, and understanding that there will be things that they're going to bump up against on a daily basis, and just being as understanding in that, but also communicating expectations regularly. I think a lot of times, and I think Matt or Caleb may have mentioned this as well, but being effective with our communication with the teams can really set us apart on a daily basis. I've noticed with my team, if I'm communicating poorly, there tends to be a poor outcome. And so being as communicative as I can. And what's great about, I'm going to brag about my company a little bit, but what Trilogy has kind of set in place from the top to the bottom, there's not really a bottom within our company. They make you feel all very equal. But it is our company culture, and just the entire culture that our company has of positivity and kind of showing up to work, smile on your face. We all have a job to do, but we spend, one thing that we talk about at the Bradford Easton is we're all friends here, and we spend more time here at work than we do outside of work. So making the best of it and being positive within each and every day, and then communicating that with my team, and communicating everything with them in the best way I can. A couple ways that I do that, to have that communication, I like to meet with my team every morning and have just a quick huddle. It's nothing very formal. We're all getting in, finishing up our coffee, about to start our grounds. I like to just touch base with my team members and, again, see, is there anything from the day before that you might be bumping up against? Or, a lot of times it's just a conversation. How you feeling today? How's your week been? And just really investing a little bit extra time into each team member has shown to be very effective. Not in just a work sense. It's very, very easy to say, well, I need you to be good. So what's going on so we can fix it? Instead of understanding there might be an actual issue here. How can we work through it together as your leader? And, how can we tackle all these things together, and where are we missing the mark, and how can we do this? And then from then, I like to create a plan for all of my team members for that day. And then I like to check in with them throughout the day and see if I can assist with anything. One of the biggest things, I myself used to be a maintenance technician, and having supervisor over me. And the biggest thing I've noticed with maintenance, at least that's what I know, is team members love freedom. I think everybody loves freedom. No one likes to be micromanaged. So I believe if I can communicate well with my team, the expectations that Trilogy has, but also the expectations of the day and what we need to get done today. I believe they can go throughout the day and tackle anything, and their problems do arise and different things like that, but giving them freedom is something that I really try to do, just because, again, no one likes to be micromanaged, and I think if I'm not communicating well, then that's not there. But if I can communicate and keep them motivated, keep them positive mindset on things, it's very easy to get grouchy and be, a resident. You fix something, the resident doesn't think it's fixed, and there's this going on, or it's busy season, all the things that can happen on a day-to-day basis. Just showing that if it doesn't affect you, staying positive, I think that trickles down to team members and all that. So
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's wonderful. Anyone who knows me, I love daily huddles. So the fact that you guys do those is amazing. And I think that's, like you mentioned, a really good time to set expectations for the day, but also celebrate some wins, right? So I worked at a company who they would put up their really high, 4.5 or above work order scores up on the wall. And the moment they got one that was, 4.49, they would take all of them down, and they would celebrate, and then, it'd be kind of a team effort to get it back up there. So, just to meet every morning, like you said, kind of just get to know each other on a more personal level. I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So
and
I know that, oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and with the Satisfact scores, we do like to, those are coming in pretty constant, and taking the good ones. And a lot of times we do different contests, based on Satisfact scores and how well we score on things. We'll do different types of contests, but also the bad ones that come in, how we're positive, being positive when those come in, and it doesn't just wreck our whole day.
Yeah, the opportunities, right? How we can get better.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know we're getting close to the time, so I don't mean to cut you off, but I did want to keep moving so we can get through. We have a few takeaways left, but if you have some questions, I saw a couple come in. We will answer those in just a second. So our key takeaways today, I think our panel of experts did an amazing job. These guys are full of knowledge, especially about multifamily. And so I think the top takeaway is really that maintenance strongly influences the resident experience. So not that we all didn't know that, but it really is including, it's impacting our residents' likelihood to renew, their perception of value, and whether or not they feel like it's a value living in our community. So it makes a really big impact on those different pieces of the resident experience. I think one thing we didn't really mention too much, but we talked a lot about maintenance being mentioned in online review earlier in the webinar. And I think one thing that's really useful is, if your maintenance team is talked about, especially in a positive light, highlight your maintenance team online in your review response. So not just thanks for that feedback, but thanks, I'll let the guys know they've worked really hard this year to make sure that we're communicating more, or whatever it is that you're doing. Like, include that in your review response, because maintenance teams really make a big difference, and highlighting them in those responses is really positive as well. I think one also sort of overriding thing that we talked about today was communication. And we hear a lot from residents post-COVID, we're still kind of in COVID, but post-COVID, that they've noticed how important communication is with their management team, and they didn't really recognize how important that was prior to COVID. So not only do we have the demands of the maintenance team, but it's also now we have to communicate even more, because residents want to be involved and they want to be informed. So making sure that we're communicating, the office team is communicating with the maintenance team, and the maintenance team is communicating with the resident, and it's a full circle. So I think that's the third takeaway. And lastly, I think daily huddles was a really good suggestion from Josh. Lots of things to share. You can help share in the successes that your team has, but also talk about struggles and how you can all get through those together. So I think those are some of the main takeaways from today's webinar, and some really great information from our panelists. So we would like to do some Q&A. So if you haven't put your question in, do that now, and I'll check in there. I think we did have a couple questions today. Let's see. So the first one, so someone was asking, I don't know if any of our panelists can answer this, how do you get your team engaged in getting more reviews?
I can speak a minute on it, I suppose.
Yeah, quickly, like 10 seconds.
Yes. We occasionally we like to ask the residents, and if we do a different contest or anything, a lot of times you can reach out to the resident and be like, hey, we got this going on, and I know we're cool, and I'm wondering if you appreciate what we do, if you could leave us a good review. A lot of times, sometimes just asking helps.
Absolutely. And I think some companies also leave, when they leave their note for the resident, letting them know that they were there, sometimes they offer like a QR code or a link to ask for that Google review as well, just to let them know this is where you can review us if you want to give us some feedback. So I think sometimes that's helpful too, because a lot of times, after a work order, they're real happy that something was fixed. So I think those are two really good points. And I think we had one other question. So do you utilize your trusted vendors or suppliers by asking them to tell you if they see something wrong, like trash or something not working in an apartment or on your community? Can any of my panelists speak to that?
I got something. Yeah, I mean, like we have one of our vendors is a cleaners that come through. So shortly after somebody moves out, they come in and clean things up for us. But a lot of the times they will text us or email us that, hey, I was in there to clean, and when I turned the faucet on, it sprayed, just so you guys know. Or I was in there and you had a smoke detector chirping. Things like that. Some of the vendors do for us.
I love that. I think that's helpful. Just let them know if you see anything, let us know. We want to make sure it's perfect. So that's
or if they notice a water leak, we're real big on that. Obviously, because water does quite a bit of damage. So anytime, even if it's just a small drip, our residents and vendors do let us know those kind of things.
And someone actually, so I think one thing we probably should mention too, if your office is doing a lot of good follow-ups with your residents, especially your new move-ins and your work orders, making sure that in the follow-up calls, they're asking to give feedback too. I think someone mentioned that. That's a really good point as well. So I know we're a little bit over. I apologize, but I wanted to say thank you to our panelists. And hang on for just a second. We will let you know how to get that $50 giveaway in just a second. But thank you to our panelists.
No, you're quite welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yay, you guys were wonderful. So up next, we are going to talk about unique resident events for August. So if you know any panelists, anyone doing amazing events out there, we'd love to talk to them. So get ready for that in August. And remember, that's an on-site team member. So anyone on site, we'd love to have them on our panel. And then you can also suggest any future topics, because we're always looking for things that are important to you. So this time we're switching it up a little bit, and we are going to give a $50 Amazon gift card out. So 1 hour after the webinar, we will have posted on Facebook and Instagram what your rating is of the session after the session, and a comment or two from people who attended. And if you go on there and follow us on Instagram or Facebook, and then also like the post and comment with the money emoji, you will be entered into the drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card. So if you're the winner, you will look for a direct message from me on there, and we will get that going. We will keep the contest open until 5 p.m. Pacific tonight. So we look forward to all of your feedback today. Obviously, any comments or anything that help us do better in the future, we appreciate it. And I appreciate all of you. This was my first one, so thank you so much for being so wonderful. And if there aren't any other questions, just a reminder, the new one for August on the 19th will be unique resident events. And there will be an exit survey right after this. So again, comments are encouraged, but outside of that, we will see you next month. Thank you again to my panelists and have a good Thursday.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye, everyone.